What are some great whiskeys to help you beat the heat this summer? Well, I've got 7 suggestions for you today. Should be a fun one. I'm Jeff. This is G Whiskey. Stick around. All right, so in the summertime, I tend to lean away from heavier cask options. So stuff like sherry casks, wine casks, that kind of thing. And I also tend to lean away from heavy peated whiskeys. Obviously, that's not a rule. It's not something you need to follow. It's just kind of a trend I notice with myself. So with that in mind, I put together a list of summer sipper whiskeys. These aren't going to slap you in the face with extremely dramatic flavors. They're going to be more light, bright, fresh, and distillate-driven whiskeys. I've got 7 categories for you guys today, and it starts with a blended malt. Then we move on to a budget bottle. Now, for this whole list, I try to keep everything within a reasonable price. So there's nothing that's going to be too expensive here, but there is still a budget option. I've got a hidden gem. I've got an aged bottle, meaning a well-aged whiskey, a coastal bottle, and I also included a sherried whiskey and a peated whiskey. And I know I just said that sherried whiskeys and peated whiskeys are dramatic flavors. They don't always work in summer, and that is mostly true, but there are exceptions to that rule. So I've got a couple bottles that for me do actually work even in the heat. Now, as usual, guys, I do have a mystery pour in my glass here. Make sure you stick around to the end of the list. I'll share with you what that is. Your hint for today is that this is from a very famous English single malt whiskey distillery. It's a bourbon release, and it's cask strength. It has gotten a little bit of hype, but not too much, and I want to share it with you guys today. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into this list. 7 great summertime whiskeys. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, we'll kick things off with the blended malt, which is going to be the most obvious and probably most predictable whiskey on this list. It is a summer staple. A lot of people know this bottle and a lot of people love it. What I've got is Compass Box Orchard House. This is light, it's fresh, it's clean. The name is very apt. We get lots of apples and pears in here. If I were poetic, I would say that this is akin to a picnic on an orchard on a sunny summer day. It's a mood booster whiskey if ever there was one. This one's 46% non-chill filtered natural color. Here in my market, it sells for about 50 US or roughly 37 pounds. And if you're of the mind that a blended malt cannot challenge or take on a single malt in terms of quality, I would urge you to try this one. It's a beautiful whiskey, Compass Box Orchard House. Next, we're going to get the second most obvious recommendation out of the way. This is the budget-friendly category, and what I've got here is Glencairn 10. This is a whiskey that I've been praising for years. This is a simple, straightforward whiskey. It's not too complex, it's not too challenging, but like the Orchard House, it's got that floral, fresh, sunshine in a bottle kind of vibe. And this is actually my favorite affordable Glencairn. I do like the 15, I like the 21, they're excellent whiskeys, but shy of the very expensive 25-year-old, this one has that sort of youthful vibrancy that sets it apart and makes it different. This one's also an integrity whiskey. It's 46% non-chill filtered natural color. This is the budget option for this list. However, there are some challengers that are roughly in the same price bracket, but I did choose this one just because it's a classic. It might be a little bit predictable, but it's still a great summer sipper. Glencairn 10. Next up is our hidden gem. I've picked a whiskey from Diageo's Flora and Fauna series, which is a series that doesn't get talked about too much. And within that series, I think that Tinanich 10 is one of the better ones. This one is yet another sunshine in a bottle, which is the theme. And we get the usual here. We get the apples, the pears, citrus, light honey, florals, vibrant, fresh, clean, etc. And this is yet another budget-friendly option. This comes in at 40 US or 30 pounds, which puts it on par with the Glencairn 10. The kicker with this one, though, is that it is a Diageo product, which means it's 43%, it's colored, and it's chill filtered. And that's actually true of the whole Flora and Fauna line, which does explain why it's not such a big hit with enthusiasts. But I'm of the mind that sure, 43% is not an ideal ABV, but if you nail the flavors, it's still a whiskey that I can get behind. Especially as someone who has a bit of a collection, I want variety. I don't want to buy Glencairn 10 back to back to back. It's a beautiful whiskey, but I want to mix it up a little bit. So if you've had stuff like your Glencairn 10s and your Compass Box Orchard Houses, and you want something a little bit different, something like this is a great option. It is a good whiskey, so I would suggest you don't write it off as long as you're open-minded about the ABV, which understandably, not everyone is. I like it. Tinanich 10. Next up is our well-aged option, which is going to be my favorite whiskey on this list. I am a bit of an age snob. That's not always true. I like plenty of younger whiskeys, but as a general rule, I do like whiskeys with a bit of maturity behind them, and I think this one is great for summer. It's Glen Grant 18. Now, I'll admit I didn't love this one when I first popped it. I thought it was okay, but I've grown to like it more and more. It's not a mind-blowing whiskey, but it's just one that I find really suits the summer heat. I find myself reaching for it more and more recently. And it's refreshing. It's almost got a refreshing quality to it, which is odd for an older whiskey. A lot of older whiskeys get more casky, they get more oaky, and you can lose some of that youthful vibrancy. That's not the case here. This is rounded, but it's still fresh. It's surprisingly distillate driven given the age. There is nothing too sharp or abrasive here. Now, if you want a whiskey in a similar vein that's much cheaper, you could go for the Glen Grant 10. However, for me, the 10 has always been a little bit too screechy, and those extra years in the casks really settled this whiskey. The 18, I think, is massively better. There is a catch though. This one is a 43% whiskey. It is maybe colored. It is going to be chill filtered, but I still like it because I think, like I said, it nails the flavors, and that's good enough for me. Prices in my market. The cheapest I can find this for is about 85 US or 63 pounds. For me, that is absolutely worth it. So if you want something with more age, more maturity, but doesn't compromise those brighter, fresher, cleaner summer flavors, this is an excellent option. So there we go. Glen Grant 18. Next up is our coastal whiskey, and I'm going with an Ardan American here. Now, initially, I was thinking to go with the AD, which is widely available. It's very well known. But no, I think for this one, I'm going to go with the 10-year-old. And the reason I'm going with the 10 is that this one has spent some time in Polanois champagne casks. Now, when it comes to cask, if you give it a sherry cask maturation or a port cask, something like that, red wine, then you're going to get a lot of deeper, darker, richer flavors. But oppositely, if you take something like white wine or champagne, those tend to elevate the lighter, brighter elements in a whiskey, which is what we've got here. Now, you guys know I'm an Ardan American fanboy. They've been around for, like 11 years now, and just in that short period of time, they're already industry heavy hitters, and they should be. They deserve it. They're a West Coast Highland distillery. They're right by the coast, so we do get that salty maritime influence. Our 10-year-old here, like I said, it's matured in bourbon barrels and Polanois champagne casks, and it is a limited run, so they only made roughly 16,000 bottles of this. It's 50% non-chill filtered natural color, as all Ardan Americans are. This sells for $60 US in my market, roughly 45 pounds, worth every penny of that. So this is going to be my recommendation for our coastal summer whiskey, Ardan American 10. Next up, we have our sherried option, and this one was a little bit tough because if you've got something that's sherry matured, it has these kind of casks, then you want to notice that they've imparted some flavors. You want to see what the sherry's done there, but you also don't want it to completely overwhelm your distillate where it starts to feel heavy, in which case for me, it wouldn't be too suitable for a summer sipper. What I chose here is Glenglass Sandend. This is part of their new range that they released a couple years back. The Sandend is easily my favorite of the 3 bottles that they released at the time. This one has spent time in bourbon, sherry, and manzanilla casks, but despite all that cask influence, this comes out the other end still feeling quite bright. Now, this one could have fit in any number of categories on this list. It is a budget-friendly option. It's not expensive at all, and it's also a coastal option. We do have a maritime character here, but I decided to put it in the sherry category because none of this matters, and I'm throwing shit together. The reason I wanted to put this one in the sherried category is because this is the kind of sherried whiskey I want to drink in the summer. The casks are there. They've done something. You notice the flavors they've imparted. It does have this rich fruitiness to it, but for the most part, it's remained a lively and distillate-driven whiskey. Now, this one does lean a little bit sweet for some, fair enough, but I like the profile. This one is non-chill filtered. I don't know if it's colored, but I don't think so. Don't hold me to that. Our ABV is 50.5%, which is quite healthy. This sells for $45 US, 33 pounds. Very reasonable for the price. Great summer sipper. Glenglass Sandend. Last up is our peated option, and this one is going to be a no age stated Islay whiskey, and it's from the Kilchoman distillery. What I've got here is the Macher Bay, and this is one of the very few peated whiskeys that I actually think works really well in summer. And I think the reason for that is that we get these citrusy, lemony notes in here that do add a little touch of freshness. Now, it is a heavily peated whiskey. I wouldn't quite call it refreshing, but it's got enough brighter elements that I do think it's appropriate for summer. In fact, I reach for this one more in summer. For me, it just works. I love the citrusy elements in here. Beyond that, we get some nice barley notes. We get that ashy Kilchoman peat, which is beautiful. And like any Kilchoman, it's an integrity whiskey. This one's 46%, non-chill filtered, natural color. This one sells for $45 US, 33 pounds here. I think it's great for that. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece of a whiskey, but it's a great casual sipper that just has those slightly fresher elements, which makes it unique among Islay whiskeys because There's very few smoky peaty whiskeys, heavily smoky peaty whiskeys that I reach for in the summer. This being one, I think that's worth noting. It's a bit of a standout, and I do love Kilchoman. I've got a soft spot for that brand. So there we go. Kilchoman Mocker Bay. All right, that was the list, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And this is the part where I ask for your thoughts. So what are some summer sipper whiskeys that you think work really well in the high heat? And again, I want to stress, there are no rules for drinking. Actually, there are a lot of rules about drinking. That was poorly phrased. What I mean by that is that I know there's going to be someone down in the comments that says,
drink whatever you want. The seasons don't matter.
Obviously, the seasons don't matter. Obviously, you can drink what you want. Maybe you want sherry bombs and peat monsters in the middle of summer. That's fine. If that's your go-to, put them down below. I'd love to hear them. Now, finally, if you stuck around to find out what the mystery pour is, I mentioned that this is an English whiskey. In fact, it's from one of the most famous and respected whiskey brands, which honestly, that's a growing list. English whiskey is on the up and up, but what I've got in the glass is Bimber X Bourbon Casks. I've got release number 4. This is a cask strength release. It does have more first fill cask influence than I think a lot of the other whiskeys on this list, so it's not quite as bright and fresh as some of the others, but it has that added intensity because we have that higher ABV, and I think it's still a great summer option. And that will bring us to the end of the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I have Patreon and PayPal linked down below if you want to help support the channel. Patrons are over here. And you can also put some suggestions down below in the comments if there are any particular bottles you want to see reviewed down the line, or if you have video ideas that you want to share, you can put those down there too. And I guess we'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.